Another spring football practice is in the books. The defensive backs, I don't think could look any better. Wide receivers, though, I mean, some guys did happen to stand out.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're locked on to Penn State football, and thank you so much for checking out this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, the #1 Penn State sports podcast out there. And thank you so much for joining this live show. Be active in the live chat. Let me know if you have any questions, thoughts, reactions to what I'm about to say here, as the defensive backs looked really good. Davian Collins, AC Collins is what he's going by. AC Collins, AJ Harris, Elliot Washington. Penn State has a really good setup right now at defensive back. The wide receivers, though, I will say this. I like what I've seen from Kobe Howard. I like what I've seen from Tyser Denmark. But Kyron Hudson, I do have some concerns about just after this latest practice here. So small sample size again. We get 15 to 20 minutes, but when we get to see one-on-one action between the cornerbacks going up against the wide receivers and those one-on-one reps, cornerbacks looked really good, and this was an intense practice. The intensity was pretty high, as guys were, nothing got physical, of course, but guys were throwing around some, talking smack. We're pretty confident after some nice plays. That's what you want to see in spring football. You definitely want to see that kind of competition, but that's the way it unfolded. So I got to start with AC Collins, though, Davian Collins here, because he's battling for a starting spot, and James Franklin confirmed that. But if that ends up being in the slot, if that ends up being on the boundary, you get now another high-level player. AJ Harris, I think, looks phenomenal here. AJ Harris absolutely shut down Kyron Hudson in a one-on-one rep, and for what it's worth, which is what I'm going to talk about Kyron Hudson in a little more in depth here in just a second. He lost every single one of his reps, whether it was AJ Harris, whether it was Collins, whether it was Elliot Washington. The three of them look really good. There's AJ Harris, I think, stands out above all the rest as that #1 corner. I don't get it twisted or anything like that. AJ Harris is by and far the best defensive back that Penn State has, maybe overall. I know Zach Wheatley is going to want a piece of that conversation. AJ Harris does look like he is on another level. When it comes to Elliot Washington, AC Collins, we haven't seen Zion Tracy. It doesn't seem like he's available. And again, he was missing from practice, so it doesn't seem, and hopefully that's not a long-term issue there, but he is unavailable at the moment. There's not much that separates. Elliot Washington won all 6 of the Winter Workout Warrior nominations. James Franklin acknowledged that in his post-practice press conference, that it's never happened at Penn State. It's never happened at his time at Vanderbilt. So that's saying something about Washington there. But when I see Collins with the intensity that he brings, the energy, being able to keep up with Devontae Ross too. He won his rep against Kyron Hudson. He also won his rep against Devontae Ross as well. Again, these are just a few reps here and there, but if we want to try to react to this appropriately and not necessarily overreact, Penn State has 3 reliable corners here right now. AJ Harris, any combination of AJ Harris, AC Collins, Elliot Washington, eventually when Zion Tracy gets back into the fold, your first 4 corners right there. Not a lot of teams are going to be able to say that they have that kind of talent. Oh, and then Kenny Wosley or maybe another player like Colin Dankins. Colin Dankins had a solid practice in my mind too, but there is solid depth at these cornerback spots where Penn State can run the 4-2-5. Now, I know that's Dejon Lane's going to factor into the line position, Zion Tracy as well, King Mack, guys who are going to rotate between strong safety or be in that line competition too. Overall defensive back might be one of Penn State's strongest position groups, and that's saying something. When Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen came back at running back, you also have the offensive line too. Offensive line couldn't be in a better spot. Defensive back certainly going to, overall, between cornerbacks, between safeties, defensive back is in an excellent position to, have that argument, at the top there. Let's get to wide receiver, because wide receiver, it is what it is. It's you're hoping that a Kobe Howard. Maybe he emerges right away as a true freshman. I will give props to Kobe Howard. He has a high motor. He has the size. He has the speed that you wouldn't necessarily see right away from a true freshman, especially somebody that was, I think, was severely underrated, but dealt with some injuries in high school and joined Penn State with not the highest amount of expectations here. It's different when it's a 5-star and it's okay. When is he going to take over, right? I have an episode coming out talking about Khalil Taylor here. Expectations are going to be lofty for him, but Kobe Howard comes in relatively underrated. He looks like a Big Ten wide receiver already. As a true freshman, as an early enrollee, somebody that's been on campus, what now, for 3 months? 3 months? And Kobe Howard looks the part. At this point in time, it would surprise me more if he wasn't in the rotation. Now, it depends what Penn State wants to do. If they're concerned with his red shirt, if they want to maximize his eligibility, then that's understandable. But at this point in time, let's red shirt aside. If Penn State decides, hey, I would not be surprised if they greenlight him and he's in the immediate rotation as one of the first 5 or 6 wide receivers. I mentioned Tyser Denmark also as well. Tyser Denmark is a wide receiver that's developing a complete game. Solid route runner, great catchability, solid hands. As a blocker, don't underestimate his ability to block. Now, I'm guilty of that. Seeing Tyser Denmark before, I wouldn't necessarily describe him as a blocking wide receiver, but now I think I have to. With the way that, same thing, Kobe Howard did the same thing. A true freshman, the way that he was just able to set the tone in these blocking drills, that speaks volumes about guys that have been in the program for 1 to 2 years respectively. So there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of promise for the receivers that Marcus Hagans did recruit here, the true freshman or the redshirt freshman here. Peter Gonzalez, I had a good practice in my opinion. Now, didn't necessarily see all the one-on-one reps that I would have liked to from him, but at least look, hey, he's on track. His route running looks solid here. So Peter Gonzalez is a name to keep an eye on, especially since he missed last season with an injury. Okay, Kyron Hudson. Kyron Hudson, I am slightly disappointed in right now. And it's one viewing session. Maybe he's sick. Everybody has an off day. There's going to be more practices that we're going to get to go and see. So this is an immediate evaluation just based off of this practice. Kyron Hudson didn't generate a lot of separation. AJ Harris, whether it was AJ Harris, I talked about AC Collins here, or Elliot Washington, they were able to win all of those reps. Now, he did create some separation against Elliot Washington. It was a jump ball in the corner of the end zone, and Elliot Washington broke it up. So if you're expecting Kyron Hudson to come in and be the speedster type of wide receiver that route running's his MO, that is not the case. Kyron Hudson is a possession receiver. He's a physical receiver, but he wins the jump ball. The thing that I praised Kyron Hudson for when he first arrived on campus, or even before that, when they got the commitment from him, was that, okay, this guy doesn't drop passes. Well, Elliot Washington broke one up in practice. So what does that say about Kyron Hudson when that's his strength? I don't know if that means Penn State is potentially, do they need to go back to the transfer portal? Or again, was this just an off day? I'm just letting everybody know that it was an off day for what it's worth. Devontae Ross didn't really see too much. Now, against AC Collins was able to break up a pass there. So that speaks more to what Collins is as a defensive back. But Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross are not these superstar caliber wide receivers at this point in time. I think the speed of Ross is going to help. I definitely want to keep an eye on Hudson going forward right now, because the young wide receivers, whether that's Kobe Howard, Tyser Denmark, Peter Gonzalez, honestly, I'll throw Josiah Brown in there as well. Josiah Brown, Matt Outten, maybe it's because of the expectations that they can kind of freely go about their business, where there's more pressure. Kyron Hudson comes in, final year of eligibility. He's supposed to be a starter. He's supposed to be one of the better wide receivers in the room. So there's not really much for him. He's further ahead where he's starting from in terms of expectations, criticism. Whereas, okay, I didn't expect that from Kobe Howard. Whereas there are expectations for Hudson and Ross. If that, I imagine that makes sense there, the way I'm trying to say it. But Caden Saunders and Liam Clifford, okay, had a solid day. I liked Caden Saunders got open. Where we'll end on this before we go to break, and then come back and check on the live chat. The wide receivers did not separate in press coverage. Wide receivers, when it came to back-off coverage, Caden Saunders won a rep against Zachy Wheatley, who is one of the better coverage guys overall. That's why I said Zachy Wheatley and A.J. Harris are going to want that, hey, who's the top DB? And Caden Saunders won his rep against Wheatley. But when it came to press coverage, nobody was getting separation, and that's an issue. So if you want to run zero coverage against Penn State, press the wide receivers. Are you going to be, and then does Drew Aller have enough time to get a pass off? That's kind of the concern at this point in time. So plenty to discuss based on, another practice session here. But wide receivers, the depth actually looks pretty solid. The guys at the front, though, still some question marks there. Still some question marks. So be active in the live chat. We'll get to that in just a moment. Talk about some other takeaways here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money, you start building wealth. You'll get surprising insights. I actually started using Monarch for myself, and I realized just how much I was spending in terms of, package deliveries or dining out, groceries, and now I get to budget smarter and save more money. You have the all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals, and you'll get easy collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever, and you can track your shared and personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without all of the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's right, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Again, that is monarchmoney.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team play live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. And getting tickets to those events should not be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Now, there's a feature called Game Time Picks, and what this does is it curates the best deals, so it makes it easier to find better value for tickets to anything: sports, comedy, concerts, theater events, you name it. You'll get easy ticket shopping with Game Time. You'll check the Game Time app. There are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up, whether that's the college basketball tournaments or baseball is back. And you'll get the super deals. The lowest price guarantee are available, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and you'll get peace of mind through it all. See views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That is code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Again, welcome into the live show. Let's check in on the live chat. Blake says hello. I say hi back. What about linebacker and defensive tackle? So I didn't really have a lot of impressions from this practice per se. Was very much preoccupied with the wide receivers and the defensive backs because they went at it. Wide receivers and DBs went at it, whether it was some blocking drills, and there will be practice highlights up on the YouTube page soon enough. We'll work on that after this live show here. But as far as linebacker and defensive tackle go, so James Franklin, it sounds like On3 has reported this recently, that Xavier Gilliam is somebody that is standing out, and there's buzz, right? We've heard that word before. Generating buzz at practice. That is Xavier Gilliam this time around. That's still not good enough for me at defensive tackle. Alonzo Ford is not expected to be available in spring. Will he be ready for the start of the football season? Doesn't need to be, because Penn State has a really good, really easy schedule, really doable schedule. Of course, they're not playing anybody that's up to their caliber. Will he be ready to go by Oregon? Because that's where they need him. In the meantime, okay, Zane Durant is going to be a face of the defense. I like Zane Durant. I like Alonzo Ford. When they are both healthy, they can be the best defensive tackle tandem in the Big Ten. But are they going to stay healthy? Now, Zane Durant has never had any question marks about his longevity. Unfortunately, Alonzo Ford has dealt with multiple long-term injuries here. Had an Achilles injury with his first season at Penn State, and we don't know the extent of this injury. At least I don't. I don't have an inside report on that, unfortunately. But it is a long-term injury that's going to keep him out. And it's a lower body injury. It's a leg, maybe it's a foot. It's just a lower body injury. So defensive tackle is a massive question mark, even though, okay, Xavier Gilliam has positive intel. I just look at that defensive tackle group. Okay, you only have Xavier Gilliam mentioned. What about Ty Blanding? What about Liam Andrews? These guys, somebody else needs to step up. I imagine they're going to go back to the transfer portal. I imagine they will. They have Caleb Artis as a veteran too. So we'll see how it ultimately, here's what I do know. Zane Durant and Alonzo Ford can anchor your defensive tackle spot. After that, it's a lot of question marks. I'm going to give the advantage to Xavier Gilliam and Ty Blanding as those next two guys up because they were close to playing last season, but they still didn't. Penn State, even after Alonzo Ford went down, it was Zane Durant, Keziah Izzard, and Devon J. Thomas, and that's all they worked with. They went with 3 defensive tackles. You better hope that the 3 that at least Penn State is going to lean on initially, from what we're hearing and seeing at spring practice, Zane Durant, Alonzo Ford, Xavier Gilliam, is not the same caliber of Keziah Izzard, Devon J. Thomas, and a year less of experience with Zane Durant. Although Zane Durant's a superstar, I think he can be, I think he has All-America potential. I genuinely do think that Zane Durant has All-America potential. However, if you just have some bad luck, right? I don't want to speak it into existence. I want to assume that everybody's going to be available here. You need some more depth, unless there is somebody else that emerges. So even if that's Ty Blanding, if that's Liam Andrews, they have potential, but that's only saying so much. Defensive tackle is definitely the position group. That's my biggest concern is defensive tackle, not wide receiver, because like I said, Kobe Howard, Tyser Denmark, Peter Gonzalez, it doesn't seem like it's a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Defensive tackle, I don't know if I can say that. Linebacker, like the linebacker spot too. Tony Rojas is now, hopefully we get to see him back at some point. I don't know that he's going to be available this spring, especially based off of what James Franklin said. Linebackers, there are a lot of dudes. Lots of players that are capable, but you need somebody to take that step into superstar status. I think that's where Tony Rojas stands, that he can become that superstar linebacker for Penn State. Dominic DeLuca is your classic veteran. And when they run a 4-2-5, you don't really need a whole lot from, well, yes, on the field, you need a lot from your 2 linebackers. But in terms of depth or constant rotation, since Penn State's really relying on its defensive backfield, linebacker, there's a little bit of pressure, less pressure there. Tony Rojas, Keon Wiley, Dom DeLuca, if those are your first 3 linebackers, extremely content with that. Then you have Dakari Nelson move from safety to linebacker. Anthony Speck and Tamir Robinson, that second group of players is solid. Penn State doesn't have any depth questions here. There is plenty of depth at the linebacker spot, but can you get elite playmaking ability? I think you can from Tony Rojas. I'm not going to discount Keon Wiley as well. I think Tamir Robinson is close to maybe being a solid contributor. Kari Jackson too. Kari Jackson, these guys are all talented. They've just dealt with injuries. That's the issue. They've just dealt with injuries. So the linebacker group, I'm going to buy into this group more than most people would, because Keon Wiley's back. Tamir Robinson is healthy. Anthony Specca still has a lot of potential as well. Dakari Nelson has received praise, positive intel there, and Kari Jackson too. Kari Jackson is somebody that it kind of flies under the radar because of the injuries that he dealt with at the tail end of his high school career and at the beginning of his Penn State career too. So we're going to keep picking it up in the live chat. I see a few comments here. You got any questions? Got anything that you'd like me to address? Let me know in this live show here, as we're going to talk more about these initial practice takeaways on the other side of this break here on a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is also brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Do you need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support, industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it is your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5. That's the letters SH and the number 5 for 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Home stretch here on this live show. Back into the comments section. Thank you, Mitch, for contributing some of these thoughts, ideas. Do you think we can get 3 guys who can get 600 plus yards? I imagine you're talking about wide receivers. I mean, I think that's too lofty of an expectation. And it's not because to say, oh, well, the wide receivers are terrible, or, oh, it has to do a lot with scheme. It has to do a lot with the way Andy Kotelnicki's going to call the offense. You have Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, and James Franklin admitted today at practice that Penn State is going to run 3 running backs. He said it's not a secret. I assumed that would be a wrinkle in the playbook. But it seems like that Penn State is going to run some form of, maybe not a wishbone, but there are 3 running back spots that are up for grabs. Cam Wallace wasn't back at hasn't been seen at practice, at least not that I've noticed there. But when you have Quentin Martin, when you have Corey Smith, when you have Tyke Hayes, there are a battle for it's Nicholas Singleton, it's Katron Allen, and then one of those 3. I am not discounting Tyke Hayes just because he's a true freshman. He looks every bit of ready to go as a Division I Big Ten running back. Comes in with the size and speed combo that matches Quentin Martin. I think where Martin and Corey Smith are going to separate themselves, you're almost going to have a 3A, 3B in a sense. And I think Tyke Hayes, they're going to want to preserve his red shirt, but he could play. If you needed him to, he could play. That's where hopefully Cam Wallace can come back too, because I'd like to see the red shirt for Tyke Hayes. Martin is a different running back than Corey Smith. Corey Smith is Quentin Martin's kind of your all around, he's your physical back first and foremost. And Corey Smith is more of a speedster. He's a smaller build, 5'9". I didn't want to, not 6'9", 5'9". So he's a smaller running back. So you get that agility, that quickness that you don't necessarily get as much with Quentin Martin. Both those running backs can catch, though. I really think it's up to those 2 to decide who's going to be. They're going to use all 4. And I think they're going to try to preserve the red shirt for Tyke Hayes. Hopefully Cam Wallace can come back because he was that 3rd running back a season ago. Penn State's going to use 3 running backs in the offense. So to answer this question, do you think 3 guys can get at least 600 yards? It's not only the running backs themselves, it's the way they're going to use running backs. Running the football, passing the football. You got to compete with the tight ends. Penn State's going to run more 2 tight end, three running back sets, and they're just not going to be a super pass heavy offense. That's the way they're built. So it doesn't necessarily have to do with the fact that, oh, this team can't have, let me see if I can pull up the stats from a season ago so that I have them handy. But the wide receivers just aren't going to be utilized in the way that they would need to be to pick up all. And again, Luke Reynolds, I'm not going to call him the second coming of Tyler Warren right now. I don't think he's there quite yet, but he shows plenty of upside, plenty of promise that he can be a reliable option in the passing game right now, but not to the extent. I mean, Tyler Warren put up a Heisman campaign. Luke Reynolds isn't going to do that in his sophomore season, but his junior season, Heisman, the bar is so high there. It's hard to say that, oh, Penn State's going to have another Heisman candidate at tight end. I think that's too much, but Luke Reynolds can certainly, what can Luke Reynolds be? He could be a future first round pick for a tight end. That's what he can be. And the wide receivers have to compete with all of that. They have to compete with all of that. Let me see if I can pull up those stats real quick, but also answer another question in the process. Yes, also Devontae Ross can be used in screens. Devontae Ross's speed is going to help in the passing game, of course, but I would say also in the ground game, because if you send him deep down the field, you better keep a safety back. You better keep it. And the second that he gets the release, that cornerback's not keeping up with him. So you got to leave a safety back. And then what does that do? That takes somebody out of run defense, because you have to account for Devontae Ross going over the top. And that's why Andy Kotelnicki, it's nice to have him as Penn State's offensive coordinator, because he knows how to scheme all of that up. So the stats a season ago, Tyler Warren carried a bulk. I mean, he was factored in more than 60-70% of offensive production, practically between receptions, touchdowns, like touches, period, yards. He had 1,233 yards. So there's not going to be a player that has probably over 1,000 yards here. Now that I think about it, I do kind of like the idea of more of a diversified stat sheet where everybody gives you a bit. You get 50 yards from, hopefully, I mean, again, I just hope this was a bad day for Kyron Hudson. Hopefully you can get 5 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. You'll get maybe, if Devontae Ross is going to go deep down the field, I imagine that he's going to have big play threat. So that means he could get 100 yards off of 2 catches, right? That's how Devontae Ross is going to be used, where the idea for Kyron Hudson is that he has 5 catches for maybe 40 yards, because he's just going to be, hey, we need to find a reliable target on 3rd down and 8. And Kyron Hudson's going to be more of volume in terms of catches and everything else. He's going to be used as a blocker. But Trey Wallace had 720 yards. And then after that, Amari Evans had 415. So it might actually be fair to say that there are 3 players that have 6, if you're factoring in the tight ends. So Luke Reynolds could have 600 yards. Kyron Hudson has 600 yards. And then Devontae Ross can have 600 yards. So I think that might be fair, because Tyler Warren's production is going to scale everything back to a point where it's pretty balanced. I'm going to carry over from your wrestling content, but you're going to get me excited for Penn State football too. Appreciate that. No, I'm glad that there's crossover between the wrestling content and the football content as well. So thank you for that. Thank you for the compliment. The wide receivers have to do something in big games. They don't have to. They just have to be somewhat reliable. They don't have to take over games. That's what Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen are for. Luke Reynolds, that's how I kind of put the hierarchy of usage in the offense. Offensive line's really going to help out. The wide receivers, though, at some point will become uncoverable, because the offensive line's going to hold up in pass protection and everything else. If Drew Aller has all day to sit back in the pocket, eventually you're going to find Devontae Ross. Eventually you're going to find Luke Reynolds. Eventually you're going to find Kyron Hudson, Caden Saunders. Somebody's got to break open at some point when it becomes backyard football there, when the offensive line does its job. And that's what Penn State is starting with. They have a veteran quarterback that does not make mistakes. Drew Aller, for the most part, right? He doesn't have, now I know in the note, hey, I get it. Well, wait, what about the Orange Bowl? What about the Notre Dame game? Okay, aside from that, Drew Aller doesn't make these egregious mistakes that cost them the game, aside from the one play against Notre Dame. His track record over sophomore and junior season, Drew Aller does not routinely make the bad play where that costs you the game. So you have a reliable, smart, cerebral quarterback going into his 4th season, 3rd year within the program, 2nd within the offense. That's valuable. You have an offensive line that, every year we say it, but every year they get better. Best offensive line in a James Franklin tenure. Luke Reynolds, a lot of optimism there. Don't forget about Khalil Dinkins. Joey Schlaffer still in the fold. I like Joey Schlaffer as a reserve tight end. Andrew Rapley is supposed to come back. What do they do with the 3 freshmen that they just picked up? They just picked it, and one of them was a former 5-star in Andrew Olish. Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, Quentin Martin, Corey Smith, those guys can be used in the passing game as well. The offense is going to be built around that with complementary aspects from Hudson and from Devontae Ross. I was at practice on Saturday. Their open field tackling looked a lot better than this time last year. They're already going in the right direction. It helps, and it's going to help that Jim Knowles is the defensive coordinator, right? That's a step. Tom Allen, and for what it's worth, people criticize Tom Allen a lot. His defense obviously wasn't perfect, but Penn State still had a top 15 group. Jim Knowles, when he got to Ohio State, inherited a pretty rough group. That was barely a top 50 defense at best. I think top 45 maybe. And now Jim Knowles inherits a defense that has been, give or take, top 10. I know Manny Diaz coached them to #1 defense and top 5 in his 2 seasons. Then Tom Allen had him as a top 10, top 15 defense. And the only outlier was the Oregon game. Really, when you think about it, the Oregon and maybe the USC game too. But that was still a top 15 defense. Jim Knowles gets to take over for that. So it matters. Yeah, see, there we go. I was not a Tom Allen fan. But for what it's worth, you can be critical of Tom Allen, but you still have to, because the stats don't lie. The Penn State still had I think they finished 12th. I think they were top 12 by the end of the season. So Jim Knowles gets to take that over as arguably the best defensive coordinator in college football right now. He gets to take over a top 12 defense. There isn't this rebuild. It's a reload. So Penn State's just going to play to its strengths. They need the wide receivers. Well, I go back to defensive tackle. You need to shore up defensive tackle, because if you get thin at defensive tackle, everybody's going to run all over you. So Penn State doesn't need, is it nice to have a superstar wide receiver? Yes, it would be. It would be fantastic to have a superstar wide receiver, because with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen focusing everyone's attention defensively on them, that a superstar wide receiver would go absolutely crazy in this offense. So we'll see what the spring transfer portal holds. I think it wouldn't surprise me if Penn State does reach out to a wide receiver prospect, depending on the caliber. They're not just going to go get a player to get a player. It's probably going to be somebody that's a game changer if they enter into the portal. It would not shock me if they try to bring in a massive profile, a huge name for a player at wide receiver. Defensive tackle, same thing. You got to get probably another starter caliber. That's what they were looking for in the winter portal. So I expect that in the spring transfer portal as well. That's going to do it here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Appreciate the comments, appreciate the dialogue, the support overall on this channel. Thank you so much. You make this show more of what it can be and what it is here on Locked On Nittany Lions. So if you are new, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast to keep up with all of our conversations here, whether it's about Penn State football, Penn State wrestling, Penn State men's basketball, it is all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.